So as a guy who's only 5'4", trust me, shorter is sometimes better. And that's why I've picked a little mini moment from a recent episode that I think you'll really like. So if you do, the full conversation is right there in the podcast feed. Enjoy.
This is Laugh or Death, hosted by keynote speaker Paul Ozenkup.
There's so much in life that is a pitch, whether it's a
Yes.
huge presentation that you're doing at work next
Yep.
week or a job interview or whatever. So how can the average person, I guess, leverage like good storytelling to help themselves? Because you help people create kind of their origin story, right? Like
Yes.
that's an important part of sales or a pitch is
Yes,
like,
I feel
here's
so.
who I am.
Because the reason it's important, Paul, is people want to know who you are. Otherwise, it's transactional. I think you're right, Paul. We all have to sell ourselves almost all the time. The concept that, oh, I'll just do good work and I'll get noticed and I'll get promoted doesn't really fly anymore. It's too many people, and you have to, now you're having to compete with AI being able to do something. So what you bring to your job to get promoted, to get a raise, the best people who get a raise most likely are the ones that have a story and not just a bunch of facts of, oh, here's all the things I did. Instead, it's a story of impact and transformation, of how it elevated not just the department, but ideally the whole company, and whether it's attracting and retaining top talent. You're solving some kind of problem, and every good story, the stakes have to be high. And when the stakes are high, that's what makes us care about it. So the more you can figure out what impact am I making in my job that merits a raise or a promotion, then what's at stake if I didn't do my job? And then I went above and beyond my job description that has deserved more than the average raise. Then you have a story to tell when it's time for them to do your review that is way more memorable, because the better storytelling you are, the more memorable you become. People forget facts after you leave the room, but our brain files storytelling in a different part. For example, if I ask you, Paul, tell me the lyrics to your favorite song, you could probably do it.
Right.
But if I said, tell me the first page of your favorite book, probably not.
Yeah, that's a good.
And storytelling lives where the music part lives.
Yeah.
So it's filed differently.
Or even like if you asked me to give you the lyrics of my favorite song, and I could recite those lyrics, that's not that exciting of a conversation, or it's not going to be that memorable for you, particularly if you don't know the song. But if I were to tell you, I remember where I was when I was singing this song and how I felt because I was just coming back from, seeing my best friend, or it was as we were driving away from our wedding or whatever, then that story about my favorite song has so much more impact than just the words that are in it. Yeah.
And if you're at all self-deprecating in your story and can infuse a little bit of humor, then people really relate to you. Phrases like, if you're anything like me, I tell the story of, I read this research that, taking a cold shower fights fat, reduces inflammation, fights off of depression, but it fights fat. I'm like, that's enough of a reason for me to take a cold shower. So I'm taking cold showers 3 times a day thinking, okay, I'm waiting for that fat to melt. I don't have to work out anymore. That didn't really work. So that's an example of self-deprecating.
Yeah. That's like, I'm trying, I'm the same. I'm like trying to, like, whatever I can do, especially as I get older, it's like so hard. It's like, cold showers are supposed to help you, trim fat, lose weight, speed up your metabolism. And so, as you can tell, I love a hot shower.
Yeah, it's the opposite. Yeah.
Right.
I'm not spending a lot of time in those cold showers. But, there's different ways to test. What's the funniest way to tell that story? Is it start with fights fat, burns depression, reduces inflammation, or wait for that to be the ending take? So I've experimented with it, and for me, I get the biggest laugh when I put it first, because my punchline is, it had me at fights fat.
I love that you play with that. I think that's an under appreciated part about good humor and comedy, is how much work it takes and how much like beta testing any one joke or anecdote or story takes. And and you're right, because some bits it's better to set up at the beginning and then have your last the last thing you say be the funniest part. I have a joke that I wrote a long time ago about my wife is a veterinarian, and so sometimes when I'm speaking to healthcare organizations, I talk about how, like, being married to a veterinary doctor is probably very similar to being married to an MD. The only difference is when I get sick, how she takes my temperature. And that always gets a pretty good laugh. But when I first wrote that and came up with that, I said, the only difference is how she takes my temperature when I'm sick. And the how she takes my temperature is the funniest part.
Right.
So I don't want to keep talking after I say that.
No.
So I move that to the end to, like, when I get sick, how she takes my temperature, then everyone can laugh and I'm not going to step on my laugh. Yeah. So, like, that, I love that kind of stuff. Do you coach people, like, when they're doing pitches, and you're coaching people on, creative storytelling and really trying to hone in on those pitches? Do you coach them at all with, like, hey, let's add some humor here, or here's how you might be able to make that a little bit more funny or self-deprecating?
Well, yes, because the majority of the audiences I'm speaking to now as a keynote speaker are tech and healthcare audiences. And one of the unspoken criteria when people say this is how we're going to decide who to hire or what product to buy is, are you fun to work with?
Right.
And so sometimes I'll ask people. I was coaching a team who was pitching to redesign a horse ranch. And I said, do you have any pictures of you on a ranch when you were a kid that we could put on the team slide? Oh, yeah. Or I was coaching another team pitching to design a university student housing. I said, can you dig up the pictures of you when you were a student?
Oh,
and make that
perfect.
your team? And maybe wear the colors of the school. Everyone in the team is showing up in the school colors. And so that kind of, like, oh, you've got some creativity and playfulness here, brings it to life.
Hey, thanks for listening. If that little mini moment resonated with you, then you don't have to stop now. The whole conversation is available in the podcast feed. See you over there.